All right, Dan, we're back. Dan and Keith. Got my buddy Keith here today. He's gonna sit in, and we're gonna talk about baiting and a few other subjects. Michigan has some crazy laws when it comes to baiting. Who can bait and who can't bait, and when you can and when you can't. So we're gonna get into that, maybe a couple other different things, and sit back, relax, keep your hands and feet inside the ride at all times, and I hope you enjoy. All right, so we're back, and we're going to be talking about baiting in Michigan. A few years back, Michigan cut out their baiting, but some people can bait, and most of us can't.
Is that? Well, I've missed that one because I just hunt out the back door, and since I moved up north, I don't get to hunt as much. I thought we were banned completely.
No, we are not. So, if you're a kid, or if you're a handicapped person, one's called a Liberty Hunt. The other one, it's called
youth hunt.
Youth Hunt, Liberty Hunt, whatever it is.
Right on.
They're able to bait.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair. I
So,
guess.
Is it?
Not really, but we've got like all these new seasons now. We've got youth hunt, this hunt, that hunt. You know, you have one leg hunt, and by the time our hunt runs around, most of the big bucks are taken away, especially by them little 4-year-olds with 12 gauge pumps. I've seen some pictures. Some kids are stout.
Yeah, 200-yard shots.
Yeah,
You know, but when it comes to that, okay. So let's go back here. So Michigan stopped hunting. When was that? 2018.
I think it was. Yeah, it's been a few years now.
And you kind of seen that coming because you go back and it used to be you could bait all you wanted. You could put a truckload out there if you wanted.
And I've seen it done. I've
And
seen gravel trains come in with carrots from Grand Rapids.
And then they're like, well, now let's cut it back to 3 gallons, was it? I think it was 3 gallons.
It was like, it was a 5-gallon bucket, wasn't it?
It was something like that.
Right.
And then they said you had to spread it over a 9-foot area or a 10-foot area, whatever it is. And
It had to be on your property.
then they just did away with it.
Right.
So they did away with it because EHD, chronic wasting disease. I mean, because of that. And that was back in, I believe, 2018. Now,
I think it started with the TV over on the east side.
I think that whole zone, they stopped baiting.
Yeah, they had the TV.
Gosh, that was in 2007, 2008?
Yeah, where you can just take as many as you want over there, bait as much as you want.
Correct, right. Now it's, but I'm going to say 90% of people are still baiting.
I would judge that to be true based on the fact that every gas station you drive by has about 4,000 bags of beets and carrots and shell corn and regular corn, and it all seems to get sold.
Yep.
I didn't buy any this year.
You know, it's crazy that and I do talk to CEOs, and
I actually wave at the plane that flies over our property over by Cadillac quite often, and we're not
looking for those orange carrots.
Or the little white bites out of the sugar beets, or
Yeah.
and I've heard a few people got popped.
Now, so the baiting hasn't really stopped, even though law says no baiting,
Right.
because they're so afraid of all these diseases that deer are getting. They don't want to lose the herd and so on and so forth. But
I'm kind of on the fence about the disease thing. It's starting to come out that the CWD may actually be a lab-borne pathogen.
Are you serious?
I've seen a few videos on it, and I've read a few articles on it. I haven't dug into it yet, but it's like all these other weird things that are happening these days. Lyme disease, all this stuff just didn't poof and just come out of nowhere. Where did it all come from?
I guess my thought was a lot of this was from fertilizers and things like that.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, we don't know for sure, and everything is a conspiracy until it's proven. But that's getting a shorter time period now. But I've read a lot of articles where the people are suspecting that the CWD came out through the feed into the large, close-knit cattle operations where they don't get too far apart, and then it spread from there.
Right. Yeah. So since nobody's really stopped baiting, and they are still saying they're not gonna lift that ban. So if they're not gonna lift that ban, but yeah, they're letting everybody.
I call it a fundraiser.
Well, yeah, the taxes that come from.
Yeah, the one guy I know that got ticketed this year for that, it cost him a few bucks. It was a pretty penny. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was enough to hurt.
So there's no really scientific proof that baiting spreads it.
I've never seen any.
Yeah. And they for some reason they can never prove that it does. When a deer goes to a licking branch, they go to a scrape.
Right.
They eat in the same fields. They eat under the same apple trees, so on and so forth. I mean, we can beat this subject up, but until the state provides evidence that that's a big reason why they stopped the ban or they stopped the baiting was because of that.
Well, you go back to the 70s. I started hunting probably the late 60s as a kid, following around, and we didn't have all these weird diseases. The deer were fine. Deer die, humans die, and all of a sudden we have all these super just things so they can do a political policy on it. I'm sure there's deer out there getting chronic wasting disease. I'm sure that it's a fact that deer can pass on a parasite to a moose and kill the moose herd. But in a natural wildlife setting, they're going to figure it out over time.
Right.
And it's always a boogeyman. There's a boogeyman, and it seems to revolve around money, to me.
I think you're 100% right. So you and I both grew up down in the Detroit suburbs,
right?
And hunting down there is completely different than it is up here.
It is.
When I first moved up here, I was lost probably for the first 2 years to figure out how the hell to hunt up here. It is completely different. It's not like you're hunting a square mile, and in that square mile you have, 200 acres of woods down there. Up here, it's a total opposite.
Right.
So a deer can bed over here, but have 30,000 different ways to take to his food source.
There's no doubt about that. That's the way we used to hunt before the baiting came in, and I don't remember when that was. It would have to be in the late 70s, I think.
I think baiting was full blown.
It had to be late 70s.
People started baiting in, I want to say, the late 70s.
Yeah. Well, that's when the truckloads started coming in and they started selling it. And but back in the day when I started up here, I just went with the locals, and I learned how to hunt, trail hunt, scrapes, buck rubs. Yeah. Get in the swamp if you can. Excuse me. But yeah, I didn't even know. I didn't come from a hunting family, so when I lived downstate, in Detroit, I came up here to hunt because I didn't even know there was deer down there.
Back then, I had just looked up this stat the other day. Back then, God, I want to say, what it said, it was a mid-70s it was late 70s, early 80s. There was only, on the average, 10 to 15 deer per square mile down there. Now,
it's insane now. You can see 100, but we used to see hundreds up here.
Yeah, and now,
When you go shining back in the day, there'd be 100 in this field. You drive a mile, you drive to the next field, there'd be another 50 to 100. Now it's not like that, but there seems to be more deer.
right,
It's weird.
you know, the field next to the house here,
Right?
I would see 50, 60 deer a night that would come out to this field.
Right.
Well, now they started giving away the 10 doe permits for everybody.
Yeah, unlimited.
Now I'm lucky if I see 2 or 3 a night out there.
Right. I'm the same way.
And
I've got my resident mama with her 2 babies, and occasionally some stragglers on that. That used to be 30. They would be in my backyard.
so you would see them out in the field behind your house.
every night. And they were a family. I could walk out of the house and they'd hang out. But now I'm down to mom and her 2 annual babies that she has, and they hang out, and then they disappear, get hit by cars, whatever. I don't know what's happening to them, but you know. And like I said, it used to be 13 every night, sometimes 30. Now it's 3. You know.
So, what do you think about that? Actually, it's not just 10 doe tags. It's actually 12.
I thought it was unlimited. Shoot as
It's
many as you want.
it's unlimited still in that one zone, the
Okay.
northeast zone. Here it's
I think it's ridiculous.
yeah,
I take your 2 deer and be happy.
right.
Shoot your buck with a rifle if you want, and shoot your doe with a bow, or whatever you do.
Right.
If you have a huge family, and I know a guy up in Kingsley near here. He got crop damage permits. I mean, the guy was out there just whacking them and piling them up. I think he shot 15 deer in 2 days. And good thing, they went to the food bank and everything, and the farmer needed it to go. But I'm talking to farmers now that they say the deer won't even eat the corn that they're growing.
And that's that Roundup Ready corn. Deer do not like that. They do not like that at all. They'll eat it January, February when we got 3-4 foot of snow out here.
Exactly.
That's the only time they'll eat it.
Yeah,
But-
that's a whole other subject there. I actually asked a guy to hunt not too long ago up in Kingsley, and he says, you can hunt all you want. He says, the raccoons won't even eat that crap. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he told me it was the corn.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's Roundup Ready corn isn't something people should be eating.
No, I don't think so, and I don't think you should be eating anything that's eating that. I mean, deer aren't stupid. If they're not eating it, I sure as hell wouldn't eat it.
Right.
Yeah, it's a whole different world than when we started years and years and years ago.
Right. All right. We'll be right back.
Every hunter out there wants deer coming into their stand, right? Why do we use Full Force hunting products? That's why.
All right. We're back. My buddy Keith is here. We're talking about, I guess, all the negative stuff that comes with deer hunting in Michigan.
It's not the way it used to be. I mean, back in the day, we used to hunt opening day for rifle, and everybody was out there. You had 800,000 people, and then the next day you go driving.
Yeah.
You get 20 guys together, and
Yep.
that was a lot of fun. We did it safely, but I don't even see people do that anymore. I think there's so many more people up here now. It's a little more congested.
Well, I know, when I moved north, and this was probably 19, 20 years ago. There was I can see the influx in that time, and I didn't grow up here, but I can see the influx just in town here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
People are just wanting away from the city and
Right.
so on and so forth.
And you got families, and the kids move out of the house and build their own house, and the section that used to have one house on it now has 10.
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
So
APR. We live in the APR zone, the Antler Point Restricted Zone.
yeah,
Or do you down there?
yes, Osceola County is.
Have you seen an improvement?
I'd have to say no.
You haven't?
No, I don't. The bucks on my property, maybe they're 6 points now. When they were 4, they lasted another year. But and I shot a nice 8-point a few years ago, but I don't know if that's because of the antler restrictions.
Well, that was before the APR, wasn't it?
No, it was the second year, I think.
Okay.
But no, we got our normal 4 points. I probably see a few more 6s than we used to. But I mean, if you got a 4-point for the past 25 years, you saw it, you shot it, because you weren't guaranteed anything bigger than that. I mean, there's an occasional guy that comes through, but it's hit or miss. You can't really depend on, if you saw a 10-point on your trail cam, you might not see him ever again. At least in my area.
Now, I've seen you when I first bought this house. You could not pay me $1 million to hunt around here. I'd have never taken it and say, "Yeah, I'll hunt around here." No way, no freaking way. Because when I first bought this house, dude, I was lucky to see something that was 4 or 6.
Yeah, exactly. It was those.
But as time went on, I kind of learned how to hunt this area.
Right.
I stay the hell away from private land. Private land is all oaks, open hardwoods, and I found the thickest state land that I can find.
That's my preference too.
But at the same time, the first year I hunted around here behind the house here, yeah, again, it was tough, dude. It was tough to even just see a buck. And it was always just kind of, if I did see one, 6-point. I mean, it was...
Right. That's the same with my property. Most of the bucks that come through at night. So if you get one, if you see one, you got to get on it if you're going to take it. Yeah.
But then I shot that one, the one up there with the funky rack. I shot that one back there. I shot that, then there's that 8-point up there. I shot that one back there. And then Andrea shoots that 2 years ago. Last
She
year.
got a boss, didn't she? Which one?
That thing was 5.5 years old, and it weighed 235 pounds dressed. It was freaking huge.
I saw a picture of that. Yeah, it must have just come out of the swamp and forgot it wasn't nighttime.
And another thing is trying to pattern a deer up here, dude. You just... The woods and swamps are so freaking big.
Yeah, that's when I hunt the Manistee. I go way back behind Bristol, and my friend owns property that abuts that, and he's told me, he said he's seen some of the biggest deer he's ever seen, and he's lived up here his whole life, and he's 60-something. And I go back there, and I find their footprints, and I'll find their rubs, and I'll find their movement patterns, and you can sit there for a week and not see them.
Yeah. I think if they do pattern like the one Andrea shot behind the house here in the state land back there, that one I got his pattern down. He would only come through once a week, and if he come through that night, he was coming back through that next day between noon and 4 o'clock.
Right.
And the first time I told her to go out there, she ends up going out there at like 3 o'clock, and he had just went through.
Missed him.
Yeah, because when I go and check the chips in the camera, it was
right.
Kind of like,
Right. Well, that's the way it was in the Pigeon River when I hunted over there every year. We hunted in a pretty remote area of it, and I didn't even bother getting up in the morning. I get up at 10, 11, and go out till 3. Maybe I might stay till dark, but I hunted 10 to 2.
Yeah.
That is when I saw the deer. The bucks, the big bucks. And sometimes I'd hear the guys back at camp hooting and hollering, drinking beer. Excuse me. And I got taken by a big, huge 8-point. And I got up out of my seat, and I got in my cooler. And I sat back down, I leaned my rifle up, and I laid my pistol down. And when I sat down, he was standing about 20 feet in front of me looking at me. Broadside. And I looked at my guns, and I couldn't get to him. And he looked at my guns, and he turned around and swapped ends and scooted out and kept a tree between us, and I couldn't get on him. So I backtracked him. That sucker walked within 25 feet of 6 guys at deer camp, playing radio, hooting and hollering, drinking beer at noon. And we never saw him again.
Well, that's like you said. You like to go out or you like to go out 10, 11 o'clock in the morning and sit for a few hours.
Yeah.
And I try to instill that in people that hunt over food sources. You go out first thing in the morning to a food source, whether it be a food plot or a bait pile or a mineral spot or whatever. You're going out there. You're going to sit over that. They're already there.
Yeah. Exactly.
You're going to go out there. You're going to blow them out of there.
Yeah.
You're going to jack that spot up for the rest of the day.
Or maybe 2 days or 3 days.
Yeah. So,
You know.
I tell people, man, the biggest daytime movement is usually between noon and 2.
Right.
That's when the deer are up and they're moving. And I'll go out at 9, 10, 11 o'clock. I'll sit for a few hours, maybe to 1 or 2. I don't sit in open field.
No.
I go find the thickest cover,
Right.
and the deer move through the day more than you think.
Right on. Yeah, that's a fact. I mean, all the big bucks I've shot between 11 and 2 in the afternoon. I haven't shot a lot of big bucks, but I've shot a few. Always between 11 and 2 in the afternoon.
And I know guys will, they'll say, well, I shoot my bucks, just before dark or when the sun's coming up or what have you.
Well, just before dark's a good time, too.
Yeah. But I think a lot of people need to realize that hunting between like 10 and 2 or 10 and 3, right in there's some pretty good action going on.
Yeah, especially when you got a lot of hunters around. I mean, it used to be, the hunters get up and go have lunch, and you were the guy that stayed in the woods, and they're the ones kicking them up. But now I just think deer have evolved to know that the best time is to lay low, is in the morning when the guys are out in the woods, and then they're going to leave, and then I can move if I'm going to move.
Right.
Who knows if they think like that, but that's just kind of been my experience.
Right. All right. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Mark here from Buckeye Outdoors. If there's one thing that we like to use in our woods, it's full force hunting products when the shot counts.
All right, we are back. We are talking about. Actually, we've been talking about a lot of, talking about movement, deer movement, things like that. Hunting over bait. When we were allowed to, it's a very tricky way to hunt. People, and a lot of people think that, hey, you're throwing down bait. That ain't manly enough. Baiting's not hunting.
The only reason I use bait on my property is if I don't use bait, they're going to be on the next door property on their bait. And
right. So you're gonna have a bait.
I have to get them into the property. Otherwise they're not going to be there. If somebody's putting 100 pounds of freaking carrots out 200 yards from my property line, the deer are going to be eating over there.
Yeah, they're going to be there. So let me ask you this. If there was no such thing as baiting, if there was no such thing as food plots, wouldn't you think that the deer would have to move more?
Yes, they did. And I can remember coming up here. I've been coming up here since the late 60s, before I moved up here. My dad's friend lived up here. And there were trails that you could see physically with your eyes driving down the road, and that's where you slowed down because you knew there was a trail crossing the road. And then when I started to go hunting with these guys, that's how they hunted. They hunted on the trails, the forks, in the funnels between the hills.
Right.
But the deer moved, and they moved predictably every day.
Right. So nowadays, even still, that people are still baiting. They love their corn, their sugar beets, their carrots, their apples, and what have you. If we just took all that away, because if it's there, the deer become very, very lazy. They
Yes, I agree.
They do not have to go anywhere. It's like if you woke up in the morning and your refrigerator was stocked full every time, you would not have to go to the grocery store.
No, it changes their habits, obviously. I mean, you get into the big bucks, though. They're pretty bright. They're not coming into your food. They're still eating what the grandpa ate.
Right.
And
I mean, how often do you hear of a 150, 160 inch deer getting pounded over a friggin' bait pile.
The only reason he's on that bait pile is if the doe's on that bait pile. That's the only reason. I
Right.
mean, I've got cameras out the back of our house, and I've never seen a big buck eating the little pile that I put behind my house just to bring the deer in for the kids to see.
Right.
Ever.
And the bad thing about baiting, it really becomes an ego thing with the hunter. You know, he'll go out there and he'll have this little basket, 110 inch, 120 inch deer that,
Yeah.
you know, that he shoots it and he wants to pound his chest, and you know.
I don't even. A big buck for some people is one thing, and a big buck for others it could be something totally different. A spike horn could be a trophy to anybody.
Sure.
You know.
Sure.
I hunted down in South Georgia in the Okefenokee Swamp one time, and a guy pulled up, said he got the biggest buck of his life, and I'm like, well, let's go look at it. And he got mad at me because I was a Yankee, number one, and I didn't see it. It was on the back of his quad, wrapped up in his Carhartt jacket, and it was a little tiny 6-point, about maybe 8 inches wide, and the deer was about a little smaller than a large German Shepherd, but that was a big deer for that area. And,
I'm sure.
and I kind of slipped. I mean, they actually shoot them with 22 Magnums. They don't hunt with .6s or anything like that. I had an .6. They were laughing at me. It was pretty funny. He hands me a 22 rifle. And then I saw why.
So, let's say this. In Michigan, let's say not in Michigan, let's say up here, northern lower, if somebody can get out there and get on 130 inch, 140 inch deer every single year, he'd be a god, wouldn't he?
Yeah, you definitely got to know what you're doing, and you definitely have to have a place that supports those kind of deer.
Right.
And that's not everywhere,
Right.
you know.
Either that or he's working his ass off trying to find deer.
That's true, you know. But yeah, that I haven't shot that many in my life, and I've been hunting since 1974 on my own. You know,
It's not easy here.
it's not easy here.
No.
No, they're out there, but it's like digging a tick out of a dog. I mean, you don't know. You know they're in there, but you're never going to see them.
Right.
They know where you're at, but when you wake up in the morning, and if you're coming into their house. There's a swamp right by my house. You could go in there. I know there's big bucks in there. I've seen them. You can't hunt them in there.
Right. Right.
I mean, you got to hunt the edges and wait for them to come out if they come out. But yeah, it's a tough game.
But
It's a tough game
that
out
just kind of jumps back to trying to pattern a deer.
here.
And it's just, you can't up here because like I said, the swamps and the woods are so vast.
Well, if you have if you have the time to go out for 30 straight days, the law of averages says that deer's going to walk by you if you have patterned him somewhat. But people don't have that. Most
Right.
people don't have that. You got a week. You got odds and ends here and there.
Right.
You know, we got some nice deer up here. I mean, I see the pictures that you take, and but it's hard. It's hard to pattern them, and then you got other people coming into like state land and disrupting that. If you do pattern a deer, all it takes is one guy coming in and kicking him in the butt, and he's gone. He ain't coming back.
Right. No, I completely agree. Like the one behind my house here, actually he was just on there. The one I call Lowrider. My first pictures of him was 2019, and he was a year and a half old, and I've been following him. He was harvested this year by the neighbor down the road, and he's 5.5 years old. But he didn't look like a 5.5. The body did, but his rack was just.
Going downhill.
No, I wouldn't say he was going downhill. He was basically was never going to amount to anything. He was a nice deer, don't get me wrong.
Right. Just didn't have the genes for the big horns.
He was wide, but he lacked times.
Right. Well, that's up here, the up north deer that I've had experience with. They generally aren't. I mean, I'm starting to see more and more big, long tine deer, but a 10-point would normally have maybe 4 or 5 inch tines.
That's been the norm. That's kind of
That
the norm.
was the
Yeah.
norm for decades. If you got a 10-point, you generally had 4 or 5 inch tines. You never saw these big 12-inch tine. You're starting to see a little more of them now. I don't know why that is. You know?
Yeah, I think it's the APR.
that's probably a good possibility.
I mean, I get it. The APR is doing something. I'm now seeing a lot more 130, 140 inch deer than I did when I first started hunting around here.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I have to agree. There's a much better chance now of tagging a nice buck 8 or above, and than there was. I'd have to agree with that. So yeah, I would say it's working.
what would you prefer to see, 1 buck or the APR? 1 buck rule or the antler point restriction?
That's a toughie. I probably would like to see a 1 buck rule because we've got so much going on now with the youth hunt and all these other hunts. It gives the cheaters more opportunities to put the 2 big guys on his wall instead of just taking his one. You know.
Michigan has been a 2 or 3 buck state
For a long time.
a long time.
Yeah.
I think it's been 90-ish, 1889, 90-ish.
I don't
I know
know.
in 92 I took 3 bucks. And they weren't, one of them's right there.
But didn't one of them have to be 8 or better?
No, it was just 3 bucks.
I don't remember that.
And I mean, I was proud.
I'll bet you were. I'll bet you were. Well, growing up, it was 1, and if you got a buck in bow season, you couldn't take one in a rifle.
Right,
You were
I remember
done.
that.
You were done.
I remember that, yeah. Yep. But now, I think the APR in this area has helped out tremendously. But I do think to get over that hump and actually make it a trophy area, it's going to have to divert back to 1 buck.
I would have to agree with that. Yeah.
Because you're the bucks that we're seeing now. I mean, I can go out and I can see 115 inch, 120 inch deer every time out. But there's this plateau. There's this plateau that's just okay. There you're at. That's where it's at. You know,
Right.
and that's kind of the way it's gonna happen. But
Yeah, there's just a lot going on. Like down in Georgia, they have so many management units with a biologist assigned to like 2 or 3. Michigan, we have the upper, we got the lower. We're
Right.
a line in the middle of the lower, and you got so many different kinds of habitat. You know, like the southern rules, I don't think apply to up here. I mean, it's just a brushstroke across the whole state where they could divide it up and manage it quite a lot better, I think, based on the habitat for specific areas
yeah,
and the population.
The Upper Peninsula is completely different than it is down here.
Oh, absolutely. It is now. It's
So-
devastated now.
The northern lower is different, and then the southern Michigan is,
Right.
I mean, so you got 3 different zones that are just completely different
Absolutely.
altogether.
Absolutely.
And they're trying to run this
As one.
as one.
Yes.
So
I mean, the UP, I heard there's a huge die-off a few years back because of the winter, and my friend hasn't seen a deer in 3 years. And he usually bags a pretty nice one, you know,
right.
up by Saney. But he said the deer population is off, and the predator population is up. When they yard up, the wolves get in there and take care of the rest of them. So you kind of,
Right.
it would make sense
Right.
to have different rules up there than down here.
Right. And I mean, I know it's hard for the state to try and regulate it because people do travel to hunt.
Right.
So a lot of people from downstate do come up here because of all the state land that's up here. So it's hard to regulate that portion of it.
It is, yeah. No doubt about it.
One way they can do it is just divide it off, and if you're going to go hunt this section, you need to buy a tag for that section. Get rid of this $20 per doe tag thing,
Right.
and just charge the guy that's going to the UP for a week $10 for a deer tag,
Right.
or $10 to hunt this zone, or $10 to go hunt that zone,
Right.
instead of just smoking everybody for $20 for each doe tag.
Right. Exactly.
Now that they have, I don't know if you've seen this yet or not, but they have last few weeks are asking the public for help, and they were.
I saw that.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
So I applied. And I got yesterday, it said that, I'm not trying to, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here or anything like that, but I spend a crap load of time in the woods.
Yeah, you do.
And they rejected me saying I was not qualified enough. That
Okay.
it blows my mind. And I know this comes down from the Natural Resources Commission, and they're the ones that are kind of
The political arm of managing game in Michigan.
the ones that don't deer hunt.
Exactly.
So
Yes, the ones that work for the lobbyists and things like
the
that.
ones that were appointed by our great Governor Gretchen.
She's a gem. Beating down the door.
We're getting way off track on this.
I know.
But so Michigan comes out and they want these. They're picking people to handle certain areas.
So just
Kind of put
monitor.
their input.
Oh, I saw 5 deer today, type of a deal.
Yeah.
I saw 5 deer on this road today.
So
Yeah. No, it doesn't make any sense to ask the people that are out there, the farmers, the lumberjacks, that are out in the woods that see what's going on. It doesn't make any sense
right.
because it's all about money.
Right. I wasn't it the general public that wanted the DNR to step aside, and because they wanted a better deer herd, they wanted the DNR to step aside and have they are the ones, the general public were the ones that wanted a different group of people to run it, and that's how the NRC was formed. That was back in the late 2000s.
I don't remember how that went down, but I know that the hunting population was just getting crazy over the things they were coming up with as far as tags and harvest and basically slaughter. I can remember hunting the Pigeon River when the first unlimited doe hunt came out. And the year before we did well. We shot some nice bucks and saw a lot of deer. We went back the next year and they had that unlimited doe tag thing. I can't remember the year. It's probably 20 years ago. There was a gut pile every 100 yards. And the following years after that, I didn't see deer in that area for 2 years. Not a track, nothing.
Yeah.
And I mean, you go walking around out there in the snow, you're going to see a track. There were no tracks, and I walked miles. It was just a slaughter.
But I think that had a lot to do with that was part of the TB zone. Right?
No, this was way before that.
That was before that?
Yeah, it was way before that. It was actually over by Vanderbilt where we hunted. And I mean, there wasn't a ton of deer, but they had put these fields out there for the elk and the deer, rye fields, planted rye. And they kept the deer in the area and kept them healthy. And then they had the doe slaughter that year. And then it's been like that every year since. To a certain degree. But that year, I believe it was unlimited doe tags.
Hmm.
And that's a perfect example of they wiped the whole area out when it was probably more intended for the populated areas down in the southern part of the state.
If you had a county in Michigan that you wanted to hunt, what county would that be?
What's the one down there? Calhoun County. Never been there, but I see bucks come out of there all the time. They're always big. Jackson's another good one.
Yeah.
All those counties.
Yeah.
I was a surveyor for many years, and I spent a lot of time in Washtenaw County, and I saw some freaking boomers down there. Oakland County, too. If you can find a large tract of private land down in Oakland County, marry 'em if you like to hunt, because there are some big bucks down there. And they're secluded, and they're not touched, they're not hunted, and most of the people down there don't want them hunted. Milford area.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of nice... And Bloomfield Hills actually used to be the rich guys' hunting area before it became, a populated, settled area with homes.
You say that because, and it wasn't but 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was before that. It was back in early December. Somebody had sent me pictures of 2 bucks along, I think it was Telegraph.
Uh-huh.
And both these bucks in the city, these bucks were probably 150, 160.
Right.
They're just here. They don't get hunted, so there's enough to eat there. They don't get much snow there anymore.
Right. Well, we're going off on a tangent, but I'm hearing a lot about some trophy bucks down in the city of Detroit now, and because it's so nicely overgrown, it's perfect habitat. The houses are burnt down, and there's just block after block after block of just snaggle brush for these big boys to be in.
Yeah.
And they use the railroads as the travel corridors and the streams,
Right.
but they're down there south of 8 Mile, and they're big.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to do it for this show. I want to thank you for coming in, Keith. You and I have been friends for, 25 years.
Long time, man.
Played ball together and
Yeah. Yeah.
hunted together. And you moved up here not too long after I did. You got smart and did the same thing.
2010. It wasn't. It just kind of had to happen.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming in.
Hey, no problem, man. Do this again.
Hopefully
It was fun.
we can do it again. Maybe we'll bring a third person in and
Yeah.
go from there.
Apologize to your audience for getting off on all these tangents.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching,
See ya.
and hope to hear you guys from again. Bye.